It is a joy to be coming to you once again with today's devotional commentary, as well as an encouragement to be students of the Word. Now, our passage today is Exodus chapter 19 and Exodus chapter 20. And because they are such pivotal moments, not only in the history of Israel, but in the history of man, I want to divide this devotional today into two different video broadcasts. The first will be Exodus chapter 19, and I've given it the title, Display of God's Majesty on Sinai. And then we'll follow with the second devotional later, which will be the Ten Commandments found in Exodus chapter 20. Now, allow me to give you the timeline as we come to Exodus 19. We are 3 months now out of Egypt. And understand that much has happened since Moses began to shepherd Israel. The challenge of leading a people who had suffered the oppression of slavery for 4 centuries was daunting as well as exhausting. 3 months had passed as we come to Exodus 19 and verse 1. And the tribes of Israel had experienced both the joys of victories and the despair of hardships that included thirst and hunger. However, above and beyond the physical distresses of the journey, Moses faced the threat of an insurrection to the point in Exodus 17 and verse 4 that he feared the people were almost ready to stone him. Well, following the suggestion of his father-in-law, Moses had chosen, taught, and even delegated to capable men the task of judging the people in small matters in Exodus 18, and that freed him to judge the hard or the difficult causes. Now, we come to Exodus 19, and we read there, it was the 3rd month when the children of Israel went forth out of the land of Egypt. And the same day they came into the wilderness of Sinai and were come to the desert of Sinai and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount being Mount Sinai. Now, Israel would spend a total of 11 months at this encampment. And by the way, this is the same mount in which the Lord had first met Moses and spoke to him out of the burning bush. In that time, Exodus 3 and verse 12, the Lord had promised Moses that there would be a day that he would return to that mount with God's people and serve him there. Well, the encampment of 3 months would bring to Israel the law and the commandments. And with that law, the 12 tribes of Israel would be transformed from a people who were slaves to a mighty nation with one God and one law. Now, while the people pitched their tents at the base of Mount Sinai, we read in Exodus 19 and verse 3 that Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain. Acting as Israel's mediator, the Lord charged Moses with the task of reminding the people of all that he had done for them and how he had thrust them out of Egypt and carried them with tenderness and the speed of an eagle that shadows her eaglets. Moses was to remind the people that if they would obey God's voice and they would keep his commandment, that the Lord would treasure them above all people. Exodus 19 and verse 5. They would be as a nation, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Exodus 19 and verse 5 and 6. You see, God would later ordain Aaron and his sons to serve Israel as his priest. However, it was the Lord's desire that Israel would be a holy nation and would serve all humanity as his priest and as a light of the Gentiles. Now, we know that Israel would miserably fail, but that was their task. The giving of the law and the commandments to Israel was not to put them above the people of the world, but it was that the fact that God had chosen them as his own peculiar, individual, unique people chosen of the Lord to give his law and commandments and tell of his commandments to the world. Well, Moses as the mediator went down from the mount, and he called the elders of the people together, and to present them the Lord's proposition. With one voice the people answered together and said, "All that the Lord hath spoken we will do." Well, Moses returned to the mount, and there he shared with the Lord all the things that the people had said and their commitment to the covenant. Now, to fulfill the institution of the covenant, Moses was to command the people to personally and ceremonially sanctify themselves, set themselves apart, and even wash their clothes for the day that they would meet with the Lord. Well, the third day came, and God descended upon Mount Sinai and made his voice and presence known to the nation. We read in Exodus 19 and verse 16 that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mountain, the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. Moses led the nation to the base of Mount Sinai. The whole mount was engulfed in flames and in smoke, and the Lord descended upon it, and the mount was shaking. The sound of the trumpet, a shofar, grew louder and louder, and then Moses spoke, and God answered him by a voice. Can you imagine the visual presence of Mount Sinai engulfed in fire and smoke, the piercing sound of a trumpet, and the voice of God shaking the very foundation of the mountain? What a dreadful, frightening display of God's power and presence. God's covenant with Israel required that the people were to be sanctified, holy, and set apart. And you know, the Lord required of his people that which was true of himself. Exodus 19 and verse 10, he says, "Ye shall be holy, for I am holy." I close this part 1 of today's devotional with this challenge. What was true of Israel is supposed to be true of all believers. We read in 1 Peter 1 and verse 15, "As he which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of life and conversation, because it is written, Be ye holy, for I am holy." We are to be holy as we worship the Lord. We're to be holy as we walk out and live our day-to-day lives. Holiness speaks of sanctification, of being set apart, of being like our God. What about you? Have you made that decision to offer yourself a living sacrifice to God? He will accept nothing less than holiness. I join you in a few minutes for part 2, Exodus chapter 20 and the 10 Commandments. God bless. Bye-bye.